October 1998. In Northern California, far from San Francisco, nestled among the mountains and dense redwood forests, there was a small, almost forgotten town, Blackwood. The town's name could still be found on old maps, but it was almost invisible on modern maps. There was a gas station, a closed school, a small church, and only a few dozen houses. But the people of Blackwood knew best a house that stood on top of a hill. They didn't name it. The locals just called it the house over there. The hill was called Blackwood Ridge, and at its highest point stood an old 3-story Victorian house. There was no fence around the house. No cars went there. No one repaired it. Yet strangely, the house was never completely destroyed. Years after years of storms, lightning strikes, forest fires burned the surrounding land. Yet that black house, standing on the hill, remained. And every year, during the last week of October, the people of Blackwood would lock their doors before sunset, because they believed that someone would wake up inside the house at that time. On October 26, 1998, a few hours before dusk, an old blue Ford car pulled into the town of Blackwood. The car was driven by a 28-year-old man. His name was Daniel Cross. Daniel was a freelance photographer by profession. He took pictures of old buildings, abandoned hospitals, closed factories, and dilapidated houses, and sold them to various magazines. He had recently heard about an old property auction. The house on Blackwood Ridge was supposed to be sold by the government. Daniel thought that if he could take pictures of the house before it was demolished, he could make a lot of money. But he didn't know that there was a problem with the government records regarding the ownership of the house. And that's why no one had been able to buy it for more than 100 years. When he entered the town, Daniel first stopped at a small diner. Only 3 people were sitting inside the store. An old man, a woman, and a middle-aged man stood behind the counter. Everyone looked at Daniel as he entered. Then there was silence again. He went to the counter and ordered coffee. The man at the counter looked at Daniel's car as he put down his coffee cup. Then he said, "You're not from here?" Daniel smiled. "No, I'm from San Francisco. Work? To take pictures of an old house." The man's hand stopped. "Which house?" Daniel took a piece of paper from his bag. It had the address of the old property written on it. The man stared at the paper. His face changed color. After a few seconds, he said slowly, "Tonight?" "Yes." "You're going to spend the night there?" Daniel said in surprise. "Maybe. I didn't see any hotels in town." The man shook his head immediately. "No. You mean no? You're not going to spend the night there?" Daniel laughed. "A haunted house?" No one laughed. The old man slowly raised his head. His eyes were unusually still. He said, "That's not a haunted house." Daniel looked at him. "So?" the old man said. "The spirits of the haunted people." Then, after a few seconds of silence, he said, "What's in that house was never a human." Daniel's smile faded. The man at the counter looked at the old man and said, "Don't say that, Mr. Harris." The old man stood up slowly. Before leaving, he looked at Daniel and said, "If you go, remember one thing." Daniel said, "What?" The old man stood in front of the door and answered, "If anyone knocks on the door after midnight, don't open the door." Then he left. Daniel was silent for a moment. Then he asked the man at the counter, "Is he always like this?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he took Daniel's coffee cup away. "If you want to go, go before sunset." "Which way is the road?" The man pointed out to the hill. "There's an old wooden sign at the end of town." Daniel got back in the car. After about 20 minutes, he reached the edge of town. there was a really old sign. On the peeling wood, it said, Blackwood Ridge. A narrow road went up the hill past the sign. The forest on both sides of the road was so thick that even sunlight couldn't reach it. Daniel drove uphill. After about 10 minutes, his car's engine started to shake. Then it suddenly stopped. He tried to start it again. It was no use. Finally, he parked the car on the side of the road and shouldered his camera bag. The house wasn't far away. As soon as he reached the top of the hill, Daniel saw it. The house was bigger than he had imagined. Black wooden walls, broken windows, overhanging veranda, dry branches piled on the roof. The front door was slightly open. Even though there was no wind, it was moving slowly. Daniel took out his camera. As he took the first picture, he noticed someone standing in a window on the second floor of the house. A little girl, white dress, long black hair. Daniel lowered the camera and looked. The window was empty. He took another picture. This time, nothing was visible. Imagination, he said to himself. Then he went inside the house. As soon as he entered, he smelled something. Not the smell of old wood, not the smell of mold either. It seemed that someone had been storing wet soil in a closed room for years. The floor in the entrance hall was covered in dust. But through that dust, small footprints could be seen. The footprints went straight towards the stairs. Daniel bent down to look at them. The prints were very small, like the feet of a child. But the strange thing was, each print was wet. Daniel touched the floor with his hand. Not water. A kind of black mud stuck to his fingers. He wiped his hands and took out his camera. He took a picture. Then he slowly walked towards the stairs. Just then, a sound came from somewhere above. Knock. Daniel stopped. A few seconds of silence. Again. Knock. It sounded like someone was dropping something on the wooden floor. Daniel went up the stairs. There were 4 doors on the second floor. The first room was empty. The second had broken furniture. The third door was closed, and the door to the fourth room was completely open. Daniel took pictures of the first 3 rooms. Then he stood in front of the third door. The door was dark. He grabbed the handle. It was cold as ice. He opened the door. Inside was a child's room. A small bed in the middle of the room. Faded wallpaper on the walls. A wooden rocking horse in one corner. And an old mirror stood under the window. As Daniel entered the room, the rocking horse slowly rocked. It stopped. A few moments later, it moved again. This time, more violently. Daniel turned quickly. There was no one in the room. He looked at the rocking horse again. It had stopped. Just then, a child's voice came from behind him. "Can you see me?" Daniel turned around in an instant. The room was empty, but inside the mirror, a girl in white stood. Her head bowed. Long hair covered her face. Daniel stepped back. The camera nearly fell from his hand. He looked at the mirror again. The girl was gone. There was nothing there but his own reflection. Daniel took a deep breath. Old house. There's noise. It's normal. He tried to convince himself. But at that moment, the sound of something heavy being dragged from the upper floor. Grrrr. The sound slowly began to move toward the stairs. Daniel left the room and stood in the corridor. The sound suddenly stopped. Then, a heavy step. Step. Another. Step. Someone was coming down the stairs to the third floor. Daniel ran downstairs. He decided to leave the house, but he stopped as soon as he reached the front door. The door was no longer open. He turned the handle. Closed. He pulled hard. It was no use. Daniel went to the window. All the windows were locked from the inside. He took a flashlight out of his bag. Then he moved towards the back door. It was also locked. Just then, from somewhere in the house, a bell rang. Ding! 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 Once, twice, 3 times. Then the whole house shook. Daniel's torch went out. Everything was dark. In that darkness, he heard the child's voice again, this time from much closer. "You can't leave." Daniel turned around. There was darkness in front of him. Then suddenly, the torch lit up. In the light, he saw a little girl standing at the bottom of the stairs. White dress, wet hair, but this time her face was visible. Her eyes were completely black. The girl slowly raised her head. Her lips moved. "She wants to talk to you." Then all the light went out again. For the next few seconds, Daniel couldn't move. His chest was heaving so fast that he thought he could hear his own heartbeat through the walls of the house. When the torch turned on again, there was no one under the stairs. But there were new footprints on the floor. They weren't coming toward him. Instead, they were going straight to the back of the house. Daniel now realized that as long as he was here, he would have to obey the rules of anything inside the house. He slowly followed the footprints. The footprints led him to the kitchen. The kitchen was completely dark. The torchlight showed old dishes, rusty knives, and a dusty cupboard. The footprints ended in the middle of the kitchen. Daniel looked down. A wooden door on the floor, a trap door. He realized that there was a basement under the house, but there was no handle on the door, just an iron ring in the middle. As Daniel reached for it, someone from inside slowly knocked 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. His hands froze. He released the ring. Then a woman's voice came from behind him. "Don't let her out." Daniel turned around. An old woman stood at the kitchen door, but Daniel couldn't figure out where she had come from. The old woman's clothes looked like they were 100 years old. Her face was pale. Her eyes were deep. She said again, "Don't open the door." Daniel said, "Who are you?" The old woman didn't answer. She slowly looked at the trap door. "Did you hear her name?" Daniel nodded. The old woman said, "Good." Then suddenly all the dishes hanging on the kitchen wall began to shake together. The old woman stepped back in panic. Her eyes widened. She looked at Daniel and whispered, "It's too late." The next moment, the entire kitchen went dark. Daniel turned on the torch, and the old woman disappeared. In her place was a long black mark on the wall, as if someone had climbed up the wall with wet hands. Daniel quickly left the kitchen. He remembered that the old man in the town had warned him before entering the house. If anyone knocks on the door after midnight, do not open it. He looked at the clock. 11:43. That meant he had been inside this house for a long time, but it seemed to him that it had only been an hour. Daniel went to the front door again. This time, the door opened. He was out in a moment, but when he got outside, he stopped. He had no car, no mountain road, no open space in front of the house either. There was only dense forest all around, and that forest was completely dark. Daniel took a few steps forward. Then the door of the house closed behind him. Wow! He turned around and looked. The house now seemed much bigger than before. Lights were on in all its windows, and people were standing in front of each window. Men, women, children. They were all looking at him. Daniel stepped back in panic. Just then, the little girl appeared in the second-story window. This time, she put her hand on the glass. Then she opened her mouth, but no sound was heard. Daniel tried to read his lips. The girl was saying, "Come back." Then all the lights went out. Daniel started running into the forest. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he had to get away from home. After a few minutes, he saw a road. There was his blue Ford parked there. Daniel ran to open the door. The keys were inside. He quickly started the engine. Now the car started immediately. He started down the road. After a while, the lights of the town of Blackwood came into view. Daniel breathed a sigh of relief. He stopped the car in front of the diner, but as he went inside, he realized something was wrong. The diner was closed. The windows were broken. Weeds had grown up on the walls. Daniel pushed the door open and went inside. A thick layer of dust on the counter. The tables were broken. An old newspaper was lying in the corner. He picked it up. His body went cold when he saw the date. October 29th, 1998. He went home on October 26th. That means, where had he been for 3 days? Daniel came out like crazy. The whole town was empty. The few houses that had lights on before were all dark. An old police car was parked in the middle of the street. The car door was open. No one was inside. Daniel ran to the police station. No one was there either. But there was a large piece of paper hanging on the wall. It read, Blackwood Evacuation. Notice date, 1974. Daniel's head spun. The town had been abandoned many years ago. So who were the people he had seen at the diner? Suddenly a car horn honked outside. Daniel ran out. A police car was parked at the end of the street. There was a man sitting inside. Daniel ran and knocked on the window. Help! I have to get out of here. The police officer slowly raised his head. Daniel froze when he saw his face. It was the old man from the diner, Mr. Harris. But this time, he was wearing a police uniform. The old man rolled down the window. I told you, Daniel said tremblingly, what is going on here? The old man said, you left the house. Yes, no. The old man shook his head slowly. You only think you left. Daniel stepped back. What does that mean? The old man looked at him. The last time a police officer went to that house was in 1974. Daniel said, you? The old man said, yes. Then, I never got out again. Daniel shouted, are you dead? The old man was silent for a moment. Then he said slowly, I don't know. The radio inside the police car suddenly turned on. Distorted sounds came from it. Then a female voice said, Daniel Cross. Daniel froze. The voice on the radio said again, come back. The old man tried to turn off the radio in panic, but it wouldn't turn off. Instead, the voice started saying even louder, come back, come back, come back, come back. Suddenly the police car window broke. The old man screamed. His body was pulled into the darkness in an instant. Daniel fell back. Then the city around him began to change. The road disappeared. The houses disappeared. He was standing in front of that house on Blackwood Ridge again. The front door was open. Light was coming from inside. Daniel wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. The child's voice came from inside the house. You haven't met me yet. Daniel slowly started walking towards the house. He couldn't stop himself. It was as if someone was pulling him. As he entered the house, the door closed. This time the house was no longer the same. Lights were on in all the rooms. New paint on the walls. The floors were clean. It was as if the house had gone back to a time when people lived here. A door at the end of the corridor opened. The sound of laughter was coming from there. Daniel slowly walked forward. Inside the house was a family. A man. A woman. And that little girl. They were sitting at the dining table, eating. The girl smiled at Daniel. You're here. Daniel said, who are you? The girl said, my name is Eliza. Then she pointed to the man standing by the table. That's my father. Daniel looked at the man. His face was normal, but his eyes were completely black. Eliza said, my father was very sick. The woman slowly raised her head. The skin on her face was pale. She said, he wasn't sick. The man slowly turned his head and looked at his wife. The woman immediately fell silent. Eliza said, laughing, then Dad found a door in the basement. Daniel's chest heaved. The basement." The girl shook her head. "Someone was talking to Dad from the other side of the door," Daniel said slowly. "Who?" All the lights in the room went out at once. The man's voice was heard in the darkness. "Do you want to know my name?" Daniel stepped back. Then a candle lit in the middle of the room. In the light, everyone sitting at the table was invisible. Only Daniel was alone. And in front of him was an old book. The book was written on it, "Blackwood Family Records, 1891. Daniel opened the book. On the first page was a picture of the house. Below it was written, "The house was built in 1891 by Elias Blackwood, his wife, Margaret, and their only daughter, Eliza." But the information written on the next page paralyzed Daniel's body. On October 31st, 1892, the entire Blackwood family disappeared. The house was found empty. The basement door was locked from the inside, but the investigators opened the door and saw there was no staircase, no room, just a dark hole going down into the ground. Human voices could be heard from inside the hole. The investigators closed the hole, but the next morning, the hole opened again. Daniel opened the last page of the book. There was a handwritten sentence there. "Whoever hears his name once will never remember his own." Just then, a voice sounded inside his head. "Daniel." He closed his eyes. The voice said it again. "Do you know why you came here?" Daniel shook his head. "To take pictures." "No." The voice smiled softly. "You came because the house called you." Daniel tried to remember suddenly. Had he really gotten the news of the auction? On what website? Who sent it to him? He couldn't remember anything. He remembered the piece of paper in his bag. He quickly took it out, but the paper was no longer the same. In place of the address was written, "Daniel Cross, October 26th, 1998. A sentence below it. Next, resident Daniel threw the paper away. Then he ran to the kitchen. The trapdoor was open now. The stairs below could be seen. It was unclear where the end of the stairs would be. A voice said from the darkness, "Get down!" Daniel tried to back away, but his body lost control again. He stepped on the first step, then the second, the third. With each step, the light inside the house began to fade. He kept going down, far down, unusually far down. Finally, he reached a large room. In the middle of the room was a wooden chair. Someone is sitting on a chair. The man's back is to Daniel. Daniel said, "Who are you?" The man sitting on the chair said slowly, "Do you want to know my name?" The sentence written in the book came back to Daniel's mind. He remained silent. The man said again, "You've come this far? Are you afraid anymore?" Daniel said, "I don't want to know your name." All the walls of the room shook. The man slowly stood up. "So, what do you want to know?" Daniel said, "How do I get out of here?" The man smiled, then slowly turned around. Daniel saw his own face. Standing in front of the chair was Daniel himself, but his eyes were completely black. The other Daniel said, "You left a long time ago." "No." "Yes," he smiled. "You entered the house on October 26th. Daniel stepped back. The other Daniel said, "But you died in this room on the night of October 26th. Daniel's mouth went dry. "Lies. You tried to run." The other Daniel came toward him. "But you fell down the stairs." Suddenly, memories began to flood back into Daniel's mind. He was running down the dark stairs, footsteps behind him. Then his feet slipped. A sharp pain, a blow to the head, blood on the floor. Then, silence. Daniel knelt down. "Am I dead?" The other Daniel knelt down in front of him. There was no light in his dark eyes. He said, "Now you understand." Daniel said tremblingly, "Then why am I here?" The other Daniel smiled slowly. "Because the house never kills anyone." He whispered in Daniel's ear, "The house just doesn't let anyone go." Suddenly, countless voices could be heard from all around the room. Daniel looked up, hundreds of faces in the darkness. Mr. Harris, the man at the diner, that old woman, Eliza, and countless others. They all said together, "Come back!" Daniel screamed. Then everything went dark. October 31st, 1998. Morning. A team of California State Police arrived in Blackwood Ridge. Daniel Cross's car was found on the side of a mountain road. The car door was open. The keys were inside. But Daniel was missing. The police team climbed the hill and arrived in front of the old house. The front door was open. An officer said, "Is anyone inside?" There was no answer. They entered the house. Everything was covered in dust. The rooms were empty, but a camera was lying in the second-floor child's room. The police recovered it. The film inside the camera was later developed. The first few pictures showed the outside of the house, then the different rooms inside. Everything was normal, but the investigators were shocked when they saw the last picture. In the picture, Daniel Cross was standing in the front door of the house. His face was towards the camera. His eyes were completely black. Behind him, numerous people were standing in the windows of the house. In one corner of the picture, a little girl was seen. She was writing something with her finger on the glass. The writing could be read after the picture was enlarged. "He is home." Daniel Cross was never found again after that day. The government finally decided to demolish the house. But when the bulldozer reached the top of the hill, the driver saw a man standing in front of the house. Blue jacket, camera over his shoulder. He had never seen Daniel's picture before. Yet when the police showed him the picture later, he recognized it immediately. Daniel Cross. The driver went to call him, but Daniel didn't answer. He just slowly turned around and went inside the house. The bulldozer driver waited a few minutes. Then he went inside. The house was empty. No people, no footsteps, no cameras. But a new picture hung on the front wall. A portrait of a family. In the middle of the picture stood Elias Blackwood, Margaret, little Eliza, and next to them, Daniel Cross. A new name was written below the picture, the Cross family. The government workers didn't demolish the house that day because the bulldozer's engine suddenly stopped. They tried again the next day. That day, the same thing happened. The driver disappeared while climbing the mountain for the third time. His car was found in front of the house. The door was open. The key was in the engine, but the man never returned. Since then, the Blackwood Ridge house has been marked as a dangerous area in government documents. The road is closed. The sign reads, "No trespassing," but even today, people sometimes go to that mountain. Some to take pictures of the old house, some to verify the truth of the mystery, some just to prove their courage. And some of those who go there later say they saw a little girl in the second-story window. Some say, late at night, the flash of a camera can be seen inside the house. Still others claim, when standing in front of the house, a man's voice can be heard from inside. He says, "Will you take my picture?" Then, a moment of silence, and right in the middle of the night, the sound of knocking 3 times on the front door. Knock, knock, knock. The old people of Blackwood believe that if you stand on the other side of the door, you will never open it from the inside. But if you stand on the inside, someone will knock from the outside. and that voice will tell you, "Open the door." Because the scariest thing about that house on Blackwood Ridge is not when you got in. The scariest question is, did you ever get out?